and welcome to another LooseKeys podcast. I'm Brad Chmielewski, and I'm joined by Jake Williams. Welcome.
Hey, man, it's me.
Yeah, what's up? Last week we had Ethan, or not even last week, it was a couple weeks ago. I think of our podcast as a weekly thing because we have so many other weekly podcasts. But on the last LooseKeys podcast, we had Ethan joining us again. So that was a lot of fun to have him back talking about gifts.
Yeah, it was definitely a good time, man. For sure, like, definitely getting back into that, like, I almost said GIF culture, but I'm not quite sure what GIF culture is. But getting into the habit of making some GIFs and talking to Ethan about that was great because he does a lot of them. So it's good to hear from the master.
Yeah, so if you missed that episode, go back and check it out. It's on our YouTube page, along with a bunch of other videos we recently finished. And that's sort of what we wanted to talk about on this episode. Not specifically the couple videos we finished, but the two we did finish were part of a series. And what we wanted to kind of talk about and discuss is working on projects that are a series, or you have multiple videos that you do for a client where you can carry a theme across. If it's the characters, if it's the design sense, aesthetic, whatever. Because it happens more lately, but we have such a large portfolio over the last 7 years where we just do one video and it's tennis ball characters and you never see them again. And it's kind of sad.
Right. And don't get us wrong. In a perfect world, every client will come to you with 10 videos and want you to do those, and you will get paid handsomely for them.
Yeah,
that's obviously that can be a dream because as we'll get into today, there are some crazy good benefits to doing things in a series if you happen to do that. A lot of them being time saving, honestly.
10 videos and a sack of money. And go.
Yeah. That's a handshake, spinning globe, done.
Yeah, you talk about the benefits. I think the easiest one to talk about first are these two brick jobs for brick that we finished. They were education company nonprofit out of New Jersey. We did a video for Brick, which was their mission, overview, kind of what they do, and then we did one that was one of their smaller, I guess, funds, kind of just more of a focus thing under their big umbrella. So we were able to. We also did them months apart, where we finished one, and then what was it, 2-3 months later we did the second one.
Yeah, it was something like that. And actually, I didn't know ahead of time that there would be more, but we learned that they had more initiatives. So it was kind of nice to revisit something that I feel like the first video fell at a time when we put a lot of effort into it. Not that we don't put it into everything, but I mean, it was a sole focus for a little bit. So it was nice to have a lot of hands on it.
Yeah, for some reason that 2 weeks or whatever it was, we just had a freelancer in. It was all hands on deck, and let's see how good we can make. Let's add some 3D. Let's do some Photoshop cell animation. Let's really make these scenes pop. And it was nice to be able to focus on that. But then, not knowing we were doing the second video, for sure there was talks of it, but I wasn't sure it was happening. We didn't plan for doing a second video. When you go in with a job where you have here's a sack load of money and 10 videos, you plan for that. You kind of know it's going to happen, so you start building assets, organizing maybe a little better. But when you just have one video and then 3 months later, let's do another one, you're sort of digging back around, what did I make here? Can I reuse that guy? And that's sort of what happened a little bit on this brick job. Plus, they decided to change the characters a bit on us.
Yeah, this was kind of interesting because the one we're referencing right now, a series to us is 2, but it's still similar style. But the second one I feel like it had a tighter turnaround, or they needed it for a certain date that we had to cut some stuff. We couldn't do cell animation again. If we did, we had to do small things, a little burst here and there. There was going to be no cell animating these small scenes that wipe on and are liquid and stuff like that. But yeah, the biggest thing I think that came of this series is that they changed the characters, or didn't want the characters to look like they did, and it was fine. But being that we needed to get it done pretty quickly, and I like those last characters, I had to try not to take it personally.
Right. So the first set, they maybe thought they looked a little too cartoony, I want to say, or not diverse enough. I think those were.
And they referenced the 70s, which probably was my color palette.
Okay, yeah, so they were like a little more frumpy and felt maybe dated, as well as a little more cartoony and not modern, hip that they're kind of going
Right.
for. So we had to update them. And I think the new characters turned out great, especially when you go back and look at the two videos. It's tough to compare them because we're like, oh, we spent a lot of time putting all these details in that we see in video one, but then these characters look, they look better in video two. They just do because we had to, it was our second go at it, right?
Right. I think that's the both of our consensus in our like kind of breakdown after we finished the project was, you know, we kind of hate that we had to change the characters, but I think the soul of them is still there, that it still looks like the first video enough. But also, we like the second and third opportunity kind of we had to do these revisions to the characters to bring them more up to a modern style because, again, that's the client's end goal. They're trying to show that these programs connect these mentors who are young and hip with these younger kids to kind of like help them out. You don't want them to look like, you know, lamos or something like who are like leading your kids to go do these things. So per their message, they have a certain audience they're trying to get to. And so while sometimes it can be frustrating to change something that, you know, we already had a style, we wanted to stick with that. At the end of the day, you do have to kind of like go with whatever the client's message might be and what they're looking to achieve. And so I think we look back at it now thinking like thankful for that opportunity to try to push ourselves a little bit more in the character design space.
And that's something with any of this series. When you work on a series, you often, I don't want to say get bored, but sometimes you get tired of doing the same thing. Around this time last year, we had started on a series of videos for Mike Tolkien. He was running for mayor of New York as a Democrat at the time and then independent. And he had ambitions to do like, I don't know, 40 or 50 videos. I think we ended up doing, I want to say like 10 or 12. But as you're getting into something like that, you're like, okay, I'm going to be able to reuse elements. I'm going to build this out. This will be our city, blah, yada, yada, yada. But then after like 3 of them, you get bored, right? That's something I think we ran into with Mike Tolkien is how can we show this, that this is happening in New York City without showing the skyline and smiling faces. And so we had to push ourselves. And then you go back and look at video 1 and it starts to feel a little more basic because as you got to video 12, oh, this is way more elaborate. And we like tried maybe a bigger camera move or added some sort of 3D element or just pushed ourselves a little more.
Yeah, if a client ever comes to you with 40 plus videos and you sit down with your team and calculate it and it's going to be one every 2 days, maybe ask a lot more questions. But I think that we ended up turning it into something. And honestly, that one like weirdly evolved because they were such quick turnaround. And like you said, we only did like 10 to 12 of them. I don't quite remember how many we finished, but it evolved where like originally there were no characters. And then there was like a face in like video 3. And then we had full blown characters for like the last 3 or 4 or something like that. So it was like wait a second, we got to video 12 and didn't know you would need characters. So now suddenly we have to design these characters that need to look like that other guy, but he wasn't designed. So it was kind of like, that was one of those ones that was a little bit like build as you go, which in a perfect world, yes, we would have probably known the content of every single video instead of like getting a script shortly before needing to have it done. So,
right, yeah. But that was I think the nature of some sort of that campaign, the political scene where it's always evolving and changing. So that was unique. Another series we recently did was for a company called Shield AI. Now we haven't been able to post those videos, but those were pretty good about all staying true to the style, I think. We maybe got a little more advanced with some 3D moves as we moved on, but for the most part, I felt like if you were to watch them, if you had the NDA signed, you would feel like they would all go together.
Yeah, and I think that's a case of we kind of knew there might be more coming, but at the same time, they already liked the direction so much that it was up to us being the creatives to sort of push forward and say, okay, last time, here's the things that maybe we didn't work so well or we didn't like as much on the first video. Moving forward, can we update it but still keep like the soul of like what it's trying to say? So it could be a set of icons that weren't working. It could be I think there were like we have a bunch of UI things happening. There's like small tweaks, or as you mentioned, Brad, like for us, it was incorporating even more 3D. I think it was even like the morning of the presentation or whenever they needed the video to show, that I figured out like a quick small thing that was like, oh, I kind of figured out how to like do like a cool looking first person video of a drone flying through like a tunnel kind of thing. Maybe we could just throw that in the UI, and we were able to like ship it off. So they had that for the meeting. So it was like adding a little bit extra as we sort of like figured things out.
Yeah. So that was a really fun case. And that was another one of those where we have had no idea that there's been multiple videos. There could still be more videos to come. We don't know about, but every time we just kind of like, okay, where are we with the files? What do we need from the previous video? And like, what do we want to add or update this time? So that's been fun because, like we said, we hadn't had to think about it in a larger project, and everyone almost is like a new chance for us, a new opportunity to like, they're going to feel like they go together. And there's not like major character changes where you're going to like all of a sudden update these people and now they don't look like the same video. There's something about that series where just the techie UI kind of elements to it, they all can go together pretty well.
Right. And we were talking actually pre-show, Brad, that I'm pretty sure over the years we've had a client who had multiple videos, but by the time we got to the second or third, they did not match whatsoever. And I'm totally blanking on what the gig was, but
well, it was this company called Fish Labs.
Oh, right, yeah. Okay. That just completely kind of went in a different direction.
Yeah, these are also videos that we haven't posted, so they're easy for you to forget about in other people, but they were like training videos used for employees to learn about phishing scams. And there's 5 of them, and they started off at they needed to be the kind of the same, they're going to do the same thing, and then they quickly realized like, oh, well, if they look the same, and you watch video 1 because you fell for the phishing scam, you're going to assume video 2 is the same video and not watch it now. So there was a little bit of like, let's make this different. But then we're like, it doesn't go together. What's the point?
Right. Just start it with a different icon. Start it with a different character or hero character so that people know it's different. Like don't start it the same. So that does happen from time to time, but I would say most often than not, if a client comes to you with a series of videos, they know. They want it to go together. They have like for instance, they could have a campaign coming up, right? And they want a bunch of different things to point towards that campaign, get people to get involved, that sort of thing. Then, yeah, they're going to have to go together because people are going to need to know what they are. I think in our past, 2 of the ones that have gone the best for us, a few years ago, we did a series of videos for the National Safety Council, and those were all very similar icon-based stuff. And then recently, we finished some videos for Cars.com in the last couple of years that were all of the same style. And I think for both of those jobs, we had scripts up front and we had approvals on boards and characters and designs for multiple videos as we were going before we even started animating anything. And then once we got into it, it's like, yeah, okay, we're doing boards for video 4, but we're starting animation on video 1 and 2. So there was like a healthier process, and it made it way easier to hand off between us because it's like, okay, I built rigs. We know we're using these characters for 5 videos, so here they are. We built icons and like pre-made animations for some of these icons that we can just share between us, so I don't have to say, hey, Brad, ease it 45% when you go into the blah, blah, blah. Nope, it's just built. You can just grab it and use it.
Right, yeah. That's one of the best things I think about working on a series of videos, that you do know it's a series, that if it's planned out well, it goes so smoothly. It's like amazing. It's like, oh, I'm already, you're done with that? It's kind of like that thing where it's a new video. You're always kind of maybe, I don't want to say struggling, but just trying to figure it out. Like, okay, well, how do I want to animate this in? Should I do this? But when you're on video 3 of a series of 5, you're just like, all right, icon goes here. We slide to the right. Character comes in. It's really nice.
Right. Yeah, for someone that likes, if you're a person that likes organization and keeping things organized, like working on series of videos are probably your favorite thing because you get to build almost like your own little libraries and have those ready, whether it's textures or colors or animations or whatever it might be.
Yeah. Do you think about that now that we're making some of these videos, and it seems to be a trend now that let's make a series of them. We've seen this like with CompTIA we've worked on, so planning for that, I think we're maybe thinking about a little more, where we're like, okay, here's all the characters, let's save them into the folder and set them up correctly now, so we don't have to worry about it later if there's the possibility we need to go back.
Right. Well, I think best case, obviously, if you're the artist tackling stuff like this, you should probably plan that even if you don't do a series of videos, that your work will be handed off. Whether it's
that's a good point.
Whether it's you get hit by a bus and you can't come to work for 3 weeks, or like, you know what I mean? Like, anything could happen. So if you have rigs, like, okay, sometimes we don't have time to properly rig characters to be handed off for every single gig. But that's a way to like kind of future-proof it for your team, to be like, here's a system. If you have fonts, if you have folder organization, if you have color palettes, anything you can do, even if it's sometimes in the past I've put together small documents to hand off to the team to just say, okay, here's all the stuff I built. Here's some of the thought that went behind it, so you can keep these things in mind while you're animating and while you're building everything. That sort of stuff helps. So I guess series or not, it's probably just a best practice that you should be putting together, like, when time allows, you should be putting together systems for things to be handed off. And bonus points, if it ends up being a series of videos, now you got a file full of rigs, you got a file full of color palettes, you got a file full of textures. Like, you have everything you might need to be able to get through these as efficiently as possible. We're fortunate enough that we work a lot in web video, not a lot of stuff that needs to go broadcast or some date or something like that. It's a lot of times product launches, it's meeting dates, it's pitches, that kind of thing. Man, if we had to meet like turnaround deadlines for like a weekly TV show or something like that, like, yeah, it might be a little bit tougher and more required to build systems.
Yeah, we'd probably have some advanced pipeline in place. There might be people listening that, work in those environments or work at a TV station, and they're like, yeah, we have like this really good pipeline in place where we have our server and all the assets there. It's like, oh, that's super nice, but when you work on, let's make it all today and we'll start animating next week, you don't have that kind of pipeline.
Right. And I think probably those tight turnarounds require it more, right? Especially if you're just churning out stuff quickly. I worked at a TV station for a short amount of time, and it was like such quick turnarounds that it was like, here's the system, get with the program. That's what it turned into.
Is that, you think, a detriment in maybe like doing the series or doing something like that, where we talk about maybe we get bored by video 3 or 6? In this case, these are web videos, so it's a little different than working on a TV show or a cartoon where you're like, well, episode 6 of this cartoon, I'm bored, I'm going to introduce a new character. Like, that's not a thing. But these videos are a little different. Is there anything else you feel like is troublesome or something you don't like about working on a series?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head. I think I typically prefer series because it lets you spend more time with things that you built. Yeah. It lets you do what we did on this brick job recently, which is refine it and have it look a little better and try to do a little bit better than we did a few months ago or whenever that was, right? So it can get tiring, but I don't think it's ever like boredom. I do think it just takes a different kind of discipline, a different kind of just focus on like knowing that like your one video, which might usually take you a week or two, is now, whatever. So let's say 5. So now it's over a few months you're going to be doing this. Like, you really have to realize that what you're working on is like a tiny piece in a bigger cog, and try sometimes to step back and look at like, here's what the message is of these 5 videos that we're trying to convey to whatever customer might have it or see it or whatever. So try to stay within that, but it definitely can be tough, man, in the trenches. You're on video 4 a month and a half in, and you're thinking about like, did video 1 like hit the way it should have? Like, I'm not sure the message got across. I don't know. It's definitely like a different muscle to focus on that big of a project.
Right, and you have to treat, oftentimes in a series, you have to treat each video like that video is the most important one, because otherwise, video 4 you might phone in. You're like, well, I just gotta animate video 5 next week, so let's just crank this out. No one's gonna care about video. I'm just gonna make sure the last one is the best one. But you're never sure when someone's gonna catch a series or maybe this video was what is, and then there's a how it works, and this was a product feature. So you're never sure how someone's watching these either. They're not always just like, you watch 1, then 2, then 3.
Right, and yeah, they might not have seen what came before, but maybe they gather that you put them all together. I will say one thing that's really cool about doing series of videos, and we've done this a couple of times when we maybe couldn't share the whole thing, is a cool way to present it, and most people know this already, but is to do a supercut, right? So cutting together bits and pieces of maybe some of your best shots from video 2 and a couple from video 4 and some from 5 and whatever. But the coolest part that you did a series is maybe you've also got some different locations, some backgrounds, some different action in each shot. So on the whole, you might look at, like, let's say 5 training videos on a subject that you're not that interested in. Yeah, it can be a little bit, you can get drowned in that work, but slap some music on it, some sound effects, whatever it might be, and do a cut of it. Now you've got a nice presentation of some of your best shots that you actually spent the time on. I think that was an old adage, right, of motion design, which was like every project or whatever you're working on, try to have one 5-second shot that's like really, really nice. Mm-hmm. Even if the rest of the video is not great, then you have a nice piece to slip into your reel, slip into your portfolio, so people can see what you're capable of.
Right, yeah. And even if you do show them all, I think doing like a cut like that is another way to like just tease your work. Like we said, like making a reel, but making reels for a specific project is always nice. I try to do that with a lot of stuff we work on. It's like, well, let's share this again in a different way.
Right. Yeah.
And in our world of constant social media sharing, that's always important.
Yeah, I feel like these days I'm in a constant state of being entertained. Like I can't get away from screens. It's like just in front of me. So might as well repurpose your stuff and share it if you can.
Cool. Well, yeah, I'm sure everyone has their own opinions or tips for working on a series of projects or a series of videos. Please leave a comment if you have any thoughts or maybe advice for anyone out there, or even advice for us on how to make a series run smoother. I'm sure there's some great ideas for setting up files or different apps or project management tools that just make the process so much easier.
Yeah, just keep it organized.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's going to do it for episode 7 here of the Loose Keys podcast. Jake, where can people reach out to you if they have any questions or want to know how you keep things organized?
Probably the easiest place is Twitter at Jacob Williams, and on Instagram at the Jake W.
Cool. And then I'm on Twitter at BRAD. LooseKeys is on Twitter at LooseKeys, and we'll be back with another episode probably later in June sometime. I'm not sure. We got some vacations, but we'll be back at some point with something interesting to talk about. Anything you want to hear, leave a comment, and we'll talk about it. All right, take care.